This is a true story that will completely chill you to the bone. On December 23, 2025, an American company made a groundbreaking announcement. They had finally cracked a famous cold case from over 50 years ago, the enigmatic and terrifying Zodiac Killer. But no one could have anticipated the shocking revelation that followed. This modern AI breakthrough accidentally unearthed a direct connection to another bizarre, gruesome mystery from over 70 years ago: the infamous Black Dahlia murder. By utilizing advanced AI technology, investigators successfully linked these two seemingly unrelated atrocities, narrowing the suspect pool down to a single, horrifying individual. Who was this monster, and what exact nightmare unfolded all those decades ago? Hello everyone, welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are stepping into the darkest shadows of true crime to explore the horrifying connection between the Black Dahlia and the Zodiac Killer. Recently, massive news broke out that these two infamous unsolved mysteries, cases that have baffled investigators for decades, were finally cracked by an independent company. Many people are still entirely unaware of the intricate details behind this revelation, or how these two seemingly distant nightmares are actually connected. So today, I am going to combine all the pieces, walk you through every chilling detail, and uncover the absolute truth. Let's wind the clock back to where the nightmare began: the Black Dahlia case, which took place in Los Angeles, USA, on the chilling morning of January 15, 1947. Around 10 a.m., a local housewife named Betty was enjoying a quiet morning walk. Holding the hand of her 3-year-old daughter, she was simply heading to a nearby shoe repair shop. As they strolled past an empty, overgrown lot next to a neighborhood park, the little girl suddenly stopped in her tracks and pointed at a pale shape resting on the distant grass. At first glance, Betty squinted and assumed it was just a discarded, broken mannequin from a local clothing store, even muttering to herself about people littering in a public space. But as curiosity drew her closer, the horrific reality came into focus. Her head began to spin, her legs completely gave out, and she collapsed onto the dirt. What lay before her was not a plastic model, but the brutally severed body of a young woman, cut completely in half. Terrified out of her mind, Betty let out a blood-curdling scream, scrambled to her feet, scooped up her daughter, and ran desperately to a nearby house to call the police. The police arrived rapidly, led by Brown, a senior detective from the Los Angeles Police Department's Major Crimes Division. But upon arriving, he was met with absolute chaos. The scene was already swarming with curious onlookers and aggressive reporters with heavy cameras, severely contaminating the crime scene. Detective Brown immediately barked orders to set up a strict police perimeter, aggressively kicking the chaotic crowd out so his team could begin their grim work. Even for these hardened detectives who had witnessed countless gruesome murders, the sight before them made their blood run cold. The victim's upper and lower torso had been cleanly separated and intentionally posed by the killer, placed about 50 centimeters apart on the grass. Her skin was drained to a terrifying paper-white pallor because the killer had meticulously removed every single drop of blood from her body. Yet bizarrely, not a single drop of blood was found anywhere at the scene. Her body was mutilated with over 20 distinct stab wounds and severe burns. Some of her internal organs were missing, while others had been bizarrely washed clean and stuffed back inside her. But the most disturbing detail of all was her face. The killer had inflicted severe trauma to her mouth, slashing it wide open from ear to ear, creating a macabre, permanent grin that resembled the Joker. Detective Brown felt a shiver down his spine as he recognized this specific mutilation. It was a Glasgow smile, a brutal torture method heavily favored by ruthless Scottish street gangs at the time. From this nightmarish scene, Brown formulated several critical deductions. First, the incredibly clean and precise cuts indicated that the killer possessed advanced medical or surgical expertise that an ordinary person wouldn't have. Second, the complete absence of blood proved this empty lot was merely a dumping ground, not the primary location where the murder took place. Third, the Glasgow smile strongly suggested that the killer might have Scottish origins or deep ties to Scottish gangs. However, These were merely theories, and their absolute top priority was identifying the victim.
Through relentless investigation, they quickly identified the victim as Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old girl originally from Boston who had moved to Los Angeles just 6 months prior. Like thousands of others, she had a burning dream of becoming a famous Hollywood movie star. Elizabeth lived in a rented room near Hollywood Boulevard. Without any industry connections, she worked as a waitress in local restaurants, hoping to wait on powerful directors or producers and finally get her big break. During their investigation, police discovered that on January 8th, Elizabeth had traveled alone to San Diego, a city about 100 kilometers away. When she returned, she was accompanied by an unidentified man, and the two of them went to the Biltmore Hotel. I want to pause here to clear up a massive internet misconception. Many rumors claim she was last seen at the notorious Cecil Hotel, famous for the Elisa Lam case. After reviewing extensive documents, I can confirm this is entirely false. Her final known location was the Biltmore Hotel, and the Cecil connection is purely fabricated for dramatic effect. But the LAPD was facing a massive headache. Before the detectives could gather solid leads, the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper committed a profound act of journalistic cruelty. Because reporters had arrived at the crime scene early, they took horrific photographs and published the gruesome details for the world to see. Worse still, they somehow obtained the private phone number of Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe, in Boston. A reporter called Phoebe and fed her a vicious lie, claiming her daughter had just won a beauty contest to extract deeply personal information. Once they got what they wanted, the reporter bluntly informed the mother that her daughter had actually been brutally dismembered. Hearing this unimaginable horror, Phoebe's mind went blank, and she collapsed in paralyzing grief. This highly unethical publication caused an absolute uproar across the nation due to the extreme cruelty of the crime. The tragic irony is that Elizabeth spent her life desperately chasing fame, yet never secured a single acting role or commercial. She only achieved immortal fame through her horrific death. Because she resembled the lead actress in a popular movie called The Black Dahlia and loved wearing all-black clothing, the public dubbed her the Black Dahlia. With the entire nation watching, the pressure on the police was crushing. The LAPD assembled a massive task force of over 100 officers, led by Detective Brown. Their primary lead was the mysterious man who accompanied Elizabeth from San Diego. The police tracked him down, a salesman named Robert. Brought into the interrogation room, a pale and terrified Robert initially denied any involvement, claiming they were just casual friends, and he only gave her a ride back before leaving immediately. The detective saw right through his lies, questioning why he would drive over 100 kilometers just to drop her off. Under intense pressure, Robert confessed that they were lovers, but swore he had nothing to do with her murder. He explained that he planned to go up to her room, but she suddenly turned him away, claiming her sister was coming over. Frustrated, he drove all the way back to his wife and kids in San Diego, leaving around 6 p.m. to hide his affair. The police found a massive hole in this story. Elizabeth's sister never planned to visit Los Angeles. However, hotel staff confirmed Robert did leave the Biltmore Hotel shortly after 6 p.m. and never returned. Elizabeth, on the other hand, stayed in the lobby making several phone calls until about 10 p.m. before rushing out. That was the very last time anyone saw her alive. Since Robert was cleared, the police scoured Elizabeth's incredibly complex social circle, investigating over 150 men and interrogating thousands. But every lead turned into a dead end. The case was baffling. Why did she ask Robert to take her to a hotel when she had an apartment? Why did she lie about her sister? Who was she calling in the lobby for 4 hours? In the 1940s, there was no way to trace those calls. At daybreak, Mary dragged herself out of the drain, only to face a steep 9-meter slope. Using her elbows and sheer willpower, she agonizingly crawled upward. At first, the newspaper thought it was just a crazy prankster. But 3 days later, a package actually arrived. Inside was a letter constructed from cut-out magazine letters, alongside Elizabeth's birth certificate, photographs, business cards, and a black address book with the name Mark Hansen on the cover. Chillingly,
Every single item had been meticulously wiped down with gasoline to erase fingerprints and destroy any scent that police dogs could track. The police investigated the 75 men listed in the address book, focusing heavily on Mark Hansen. Hansen was a local nightclub owner who knew Elizabeth well. She had even lived at his house recently. Hansen had aggressively hit on her, but after she rejected him, things got tense, and she moved out. Police suspected a motive of rejection, but Hansen had an ironclad alibi, placing him over 100 kilometers away during the murder. The taunts from the killer continued. A black purse and shoe belonging to Elizabeth were found in an alley just 3 kilometers from the body. Later, another shoe was found on a beach containing a penciled note signed Mary, mocking the police for taking too long. The killer sent another letter promising to turn himself in on January 29th, causing the LAPD to surround the station with SWAT teams. The killer never showed up, instead sending a final letter saying, "I changed my mind." The LAPD became a national laughingstock. Desperate, they focused on the surgical precision of the cuts, screening over 3,000 local medical students and doctors, but found absolutely nothing. The case went completely cold. Over the next several decades, over 60 different people falsely confessed to the crime for fame or due to mental illness, wasting massive amounts of police resources. Unsolved until 1999, when a retired police officer named Steve made a horrifying discovery while sorting through his recently deceased father's belongings. A photograph of Elizabeth Short and handwriting that perfectly matched the killer's letters. Steve's father had been a surgeon, with a notoriously terrible reputation. Years prior, he was suspected of murdering his secretary, and later, his own daughter accused him of sexual assault, though he avoided charges due to a lack of concrete evidence. Despite Steve's shocking discovery, the courts ruled that the evidence was too old and circumstantial to officially close the case. Fast forward to December 2025. With massive advancements in AI, deep learning, and cryptography, an independent company took up the mantle. The company was founded by Alex, an autistic genius who, despite dropping out of school due to severe bullying, had self-taught himself to become a master in cryptography and computer analysis. He and his wife formed a company specifically to crack America's most famous cold case, the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac case was a legendary nightmare. Between December 1968 and October 1969, in the San Francisco Bay Area, a killer targeted couples and a cab driver, leaving 5 dead and 2 severely injured. Just like the Black Dahlia killer, the Zodiac was incredibly arrogant, calling the police to brag and sending over 20 taunting letters to newspapers between 1969 and 1974. He claimed to have murdered 37 people to collect slaves for the afterlife, signing his letters with the word Zodiac. The most famous aspect of the Zodiac were his 4 cryptographic ciphers. He demanded they be published, or he would kill again. The ciphers used English letters, Celtic church symbols, nautical signs, Greek letters, and astrological symbols. The first cipher was quickly solved by a teacher couple, revealing a twisted manifesto about killing for fun and collecting slaves. The second cipher, which utilized complex anagrams and substitution, took experts over 50 years to crack. The third cipher, sent in April 1970, was incredibly short, starting with "My name is," followed by 13 encrypted characters. The fourth cipher included a map of the Bay Area. Alex's AI company utilized deep learning data models, capable of translating dead languages like Tangut, to finally crack these last codes. The AI successfully decoded the 13-character name, Marvin Margolis. This is where the story gets absolutely terrifying. Marvin Margolis was not on the Zodiac suspect list, but he was a prime suspect in the 1947 Black Dahlia investigation. Furthermore, the AI decoded the Zodiac's map location. Police had always assumed it was a bomb threat, but the coordinates pointed to a real location, a 1940s establishment called the Zodiac Motel. The AI deduced that the killer took his name, Zodiac, from this very motel, implying it was the actual undiscovered location where he murdered and dismembered the Black Dahlia. The investigators dug deep into Marvin Margolis's past, and the connections were undeniable. During the Black Dahlia murder, Marvin lived in Los Angeles and definitively knew Elizabeth Short. In fact, his address perfectly matched hers, suggesting he was either her landlord or the building manager. Furthermore, Marvin had served as a Navy medic, giving him the exact surgical expertise seen on Elizabeth's body. After his military service, he studied pre-med at the University of Southern California. Right after the LAPD questioned and cleared him for the Black Dahlia murder, Marvin abruptly dropped out of medical school, moved out of California, and changed his name to Marvin Merrill. Military records showed he was discharged from the Navy for severe psychiatric issues, described as highly erratic and aggressive. Marvin lived as a drifter across the country before finally settling in the San Francisco Bay Area just before the Zodiac murders began.
Marvin Margolis died of cancer in 1993, evading justice. But the physical evidence was staggering. The famous police sketch of the Zodiac killer, based on survivor descriptions, was an exact, identical match to Marvin's face. The final nail in the coffin came from Marvin's own son. After his father's death, the son sent investigators an old drawing his father had made. It was a portrait of a woman labeled Elizabeth. While it couldn't be definitively proven it was Elizabeth Short, the woman in the drawing was covered in cut marks. When investigators overlaid the drawing with Elizabeth's classified 1947 autopsy report, the location and angles of the cuts matched perfectly. The investigators then used advanced image enhancement scanning on the drawing. Hidden beneath the dark ink of the woman's hair in the bottom right corner, they found a concealed word Marvin had written and tried to scribble over: Zodiac. A cryptography expert from the National Security Agency reviewed the AI's findings and confirmed they were highly credible. Veteran homicide detectives agreed that this chain of evidence would be entirely acceptable in a court of law. If fully officially certified, Marvin Margolis will go down in history as the most elusive, brutal, and twisted serial killer not just in America, but perhaps the entire world. It is a chilling reminder of the monsters that can hide in plain sight, escaping justice for over 70 years until the future finally catches up to them.